morning. It's another Friday. That means another Zogby report, real and unscripted. With me, I'm John, with my son and business partner, Jeremy. How you doing today?
Good, you?
I'm doing okay. So we'll get right into it. So I'll begin with, these are spontaneous, okay? All right. I know there is a lot of kerfuffle about the Supreme Court leaked memo. We'll get into that later. But for now, we have some immediate issues. And we're pollsters, so we deal with politics. And the hottest topic right now, there are two major primaries on Tuesday, the 17th. One's in North Carolina, the other in Pennsylvania. Both are swing states, and both figure into the Donald Trump strategy very, very much. I think we can talk short shrift on North Carolina because the primary is pretty settled. Pennsylvania has become very intriguing and very complicated, and it's anybody's guess. So let's get North Carolina out of the way. So Donald Trump has backed Ted Budd, who's been in Congress now for about 5 years, conservative, and since that endorsement by Trump, Budd has just taken off. One would have to say that hell would have to freeze over on Tuesday the 17th for Budd to not win the Republican primary. He's leading by about 30 points right now as we speak. So that's pretty much settled. Democratic side is settled as well. A good field, but not quite as much, but Sherry Beasley has pulled away in the lead. She's the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, North Carolina, Ivy League educated, Oxford as well. She's a black woman in a state where the black vote has been climbing. North Carolina has been trending red in the last couple of elections. Donald Trump won it both times. Barack Obama had won North Carolina too. So it's generally a question about turnout. But now we've got North Carolina's major candidates settled, and at this moment, Budd, the Republican, leads by about 6 or 7 percentage points over Beasley. But so many things are definitely going to happen between now and November, but anybody's guess. You have a feel for it at all?
No, I'm watching more Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
But do you want to start with Pennsylvania, or do you want me to? Were you going to transition?
I'm going to transition right now,
Okay.
Unless you had some North Carolina comments. So we have a Senate race and a gubernatorial race, and we have to really talk about both of them because they've kind of merged right now. So the Senate race, you have former hedge fund guy, David McCormick, who happens to be married, incidentally, to Dina Powell, who was in the Trump administration, a well-known mainstream Republican figure. But, obviously McCormick was looking for Trump's endorsement, did not get it.
Yeah.
Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz, got the endorsement. And it's worked to a certain degree. Oz had been trailing and actually declining. Right now, as we speak, the latest polls, Oz is leading by anywhere from 1 to 2 points, 23%. McCormick at 20 or 21. Kathy Barnette at 20 or 21. We're going to talk about her. But bottom line is Oz and McCormick, as we've talked about before in this podcast, are beating each other's brains and spending an enormous amount of money. We have been in Pennsylvania, and it's been nonstop for months now. I should point out that to a large degree, because of that, you still have 1/3 to 40% of the GOP voters who are undecided. Two things are happening here, though, probably because the two leading contenders have been going at it. Kathy Barnette, little is known about her. A black conservative who moved into Pennsylvania only about 8 years ago, frankly, just like McCormick and Oz even more recently. But Kathy Barnette ran for Congress in the Philadelphia area Democratic district and got trounced. But little is known about her. She's listed as a radio commentator, but she has no formal position. She just appears on radio here and there. And she's listed as an adjunct faculty member, but no one's been able to trace where or what she has done in terms of adjunct faculty. Her mother was a rape victim at 11 and produced Kathy, and so she's become kind of a hero on the issue of abortion, particularly of late. But the thing is, it's a three-way race.
Yeah.
And just one final point on the Senate, on the Republican side, is that Trump has now issued a statement saying that on one hand, she is totally ill-prepared to serve the United States Senate. However, we will welcome her with open arms into the Republican Party. She's our kind of person.
Yeah.
Okay, mixed messages.
Well, you can't deny. I mean, you look at her website for Senate, and it's like Donald Trump all over again. Look at her tweets. She's calling out the World Health Organization. She's calling out the Federal Reserve. Does that sound familiar? And she's calling out the World Economic Forum. And so, like Trump in 2016, who called out globalism and said national sovereignty is the order of the day, and it should and will continue to be the order of the day. Globalism is going into the abyss, the unknown. And Donald Trump sent those signals out. What was the trade deal, the Pacific, I can't remember.
The trade partnership.
Yeah, the trade, TP, whatever. He called that out. So she's got that dynamic. She's got that messaging of, populist, anti-establishment, but she's careful not to go too far with taking that into foreign policy. You read her tweets, you read her website, she's very careful about her language in dealing with Ukraine and dealing with Russia. But again, like Trump, using the language that we're here because of Biden. If Biden were in office, none of this would have happened.
She's not so careful, though, on being militantly anti-Muslim and anti-gay. She has called gays demonic and demented. There's some troubling rhetoric coming from there.
Well, yeah, but the point being that her platform, by and large, not suggesting 100%, but by and large, mirrors Trump. And so the interesting thing is, if you look at her on a line graph, her trending upward is exploding.
Exploding, yeah, it's 45-degree angle.
And McCormick is trending downward. Now, let me say a little bit about McCormick. I'm still trying to figure out whether he's from the blue-blooded McCormick family. I don't think so, but nonetheless, his resume speaks as if he were.
Is that McCormick Spice?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. Yeah.
But West Point, hedge fund manager, Wall Street guy, has held high positions. Here's the thing about McCormick. This is where I think he's in trouble. He has Pompeo's support. He has Pompeo's stamp of approval. He couldn't get it from Trump, but he got it from Pompeo. And my hunch is, by and large, Trump voters do not like Mike Pompeo. I believe that a big portion of them would see him as a swamp creature. And so then you move on to Oz. And, we all saw the speech at the rally. It was atrocious. It was laughable. Anybody who has to tell you that they're smart 5 times within 30 seconds, it's not to say that you question his intelligence. It's just not a smart move.
He's trying too hard.
And it didn't come off natural. But here's the thing. So no question about it. It's a 3-way tie. It's up in the air. We don't know.
And a lot undecided.
Yeah, last I saw, I think it was about a fifth in the Republican primary who were undecided, and there's really no way to predict where they're going to move. But here's what I'm going to use reason, and so Barnett is by and large trying to out-Trump Trump. McCormick didn't get the endorsement. Oz got the endorsement. We know all the flaws and we know all the strengths. But when you're that undecided and you're going into the booth and you're saying to yourself, who am I voting for? We just saw what happened in Ohio. We saw earlier in the gubernatorial what happened in Virginia that really gave the momentum, and almost what happened in New Jersey, by the way, that gave the momentum for MAGA 2.0 to get people to think, wow, they could take back the House in 2022. That's on the mind of the undecided. And so all the flaws from Oz, you go into that voting booth, and do you essentially give the middle finger to Donald Trump and say, I'm not going to go with the Trump chosen candidate. I'm going to bet on the other horse, like Barnett, for example. Does that bring down MAGA? Or is that undecided voter who's going against Oz say, no, Trump, we're gonna pull you towards where we think you should have gone? I don't know that it works like that. I think that undecided voter is gonna go along with MAGA 2.0. Whether they really are crazy about Oz or not, he got the stamp of approval, and if he wins, MAGA 2.0 continues, the wave continues.
I don't disagree with that assessment at all. Just a kind of a different sort of spin is that we do know from a multitude of interviews and follow-up interviews with GOP, likely GOP primary voters, that an unsuitable number of them do not like Oz and are actually troubled with Trump's endorsement. I'm going to rule out McCormick. I just am.
Yeah.
Too much baggage there, and the barrage continues. Trump, among his criticisms, his chief criticism of Barnett, is that she can't win in November. And that does mean, we'll take a second on this shortly, that would mean a progressive Democrat, John Fetterman, then has a good shot at being elected to the Senate, a pickup, for the Democrats, because Pat Toomey, the Republican, is now the senator. But the thing about Kathy Barnette is that she has picked up two powerful, high-spending endorsements. One is the Club for Growth, which has been kind of a mainstream conservative group, although they pumped a lot of money into Josh Mandel in Ohio, and it didn't work. But still, she's now catching up with money, in the closing weeks. The other is the Susan B. Anthony Fund, which is the kind of the conservative mirror to Emily's List, which funds Democratic women, has also endorsed Kathy Barnette, and she getting a lot of money from there as well. So I think this is up in the air. I'm going to say Oz wins by a hair.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go further than that.
Oh yeah, no. I don't think so.
Yeah. Just by way of closure on Pennsylvania, Senate, because we still have the governor's race. The John Fetterman, who I just mentioned, is populist and quite a popular figure in Pennsylvania. Republicans are licking their chops. They think that they have a good shot at keeping that seat. But whoever the Republicans nominate will be a MAGA candidate. So you'll have a far right and a far left candidate. And that so is not Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania normally, even with its polarities, generally, elects someone who's kind of middle-of-the-road conservative, middle-of-the-road liberal. This is going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
Anybody's guess. Going governor's race is fascinating. Again, whoever wins the Republican nomination is going to be a MAGA candidate. Donald Trump has endorsed Lou Barletta. We know Lou Barletta, done a lot of work in Hazleton. He's former mayor, with congressman, early endorser of Donald Trump going back to 2015, almost a cabinet position by Trump. Barletta was the front runner, but a state senator by the name of Doug Mastriano, who is prone to QAnon and to conspiracy theories, is now not only pulling ahead of the Trump-endorsed candidate, but pulling away, or so it seems, 10 to 12 points in the last polls. And Barletta is declining while Mastriano building. Interestingly, just to complicate this a little more, Mastriano and Barnett have kind of formed an alliance, almost as running mates going into this. We're going to have a very interesting Tuesday in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Seems like Mastriano will win the nomination, but in the gubernatorial race, he'll be running against the sitting attorney general, who really, as it turns out, doesn't have much of a primary after all. And so does Pennsylvania tilt right, or does it tilt moderate, or tilt left? I don't know.
Remains to be seen.
Yeah, and it was a close one in 2020.
Yeah.
Very, very close. Okay, that's all of our races.
Yeah.
So two issues involved, right? Everybody's talking about the Alito memo that was leaked. So one issue is the vote that is a majority backing the Alito draft. The other story is the leakage and kind of the violation of the tradition, an unspoken rule of the court. No one could conjure up another time when a leak has happened. Let's talk about the content first. Is this a done deal? Is Roe v. Wade going to be overturned?
We have to get through the summer.
Yeah.
Because the summer is going to be ugly. I mean,
of course, they will make a decision by June when they close down.
Yeah, but we're basically in summer right now.
Okay.
And remember, with George Floyd, that was after Memorial Day.
So you're talking about the response now.
We're talking about the response. Mm-hmm. And Mayor Lightfoot's reaction and what she had to say. If anybody missed that, that's pretty indicative of what could happen. And so, I mean, in Madison, there was already I think a firebombing or an attack against a right to life group, and so it's going to be a long summer, and whichever way the decision goes, I think what we're going to see between now and into June and beyond June is probably going to surpass 2020.
So Democrats are saying, in a left-handed sort of way, this is manna from heaven. If there was a lack of enthusiasm for Joe Biden, for Democratic candidates, this is going to bring voters out, particularly young women who have made a difference. They came out for Obama in 2012. They did not come out for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So this is an actual mobilization tool. Republicans are going to say the cost of bread and the cost of lettuce is ultimately what voters care about. This is a blip on the screen.
Well, the cost of bread, the cost of lettuce, the cost of diesel, the cost of gasoline, surging rent, who knows? Inflation is likely to spiral out of control. I've been saying that for a while. And I've heard from people tell me, inflation was yesterday's news. And boy, were they wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not just inflation. So the abortion issue, no question about it, is going to excite the Democratic base. I do believe that. But right now, that's about all they've got. And so you've got the economy, but then remember, the ground game started with the local and grassroots uprisings in places like Virginia, specifically Loudoun County, with the ethos being they're coming for your children, right? The mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, critical race theory, new things being taught in education, parents being labeled terrorists for voicing their opinions and doing something that, we basically by and large have been doing in this history's country. Now you've got freedom of speech coming from people within the Department of Homeland Security who are saying freedom of speech is non-existent. You've got individuals who have formed a disinformation governance board who are talking about turning Twitter into Wikipedia where you edit the tweets. This has actually been talked about. So the question is how much can abortion really drive the Democrats when Republicans have 7 or 8 major issues to drive? That's going to have to be very monumental momentum on the side of Democrats that I just don't think they can muster up unless they get 2 or 3 or 4 more issues that they can excite the heck out of their base.
Things are bleak for the Democrats. They continue to be. President Biden trying to get on top of the message, but is not able to get through the clutter. The issue is whether or not conservatives have overplayed their hand on this one. And I don't know what
This one being?
I'm sorry, the abortion issue. And the fear then of that if abortion is gay marriage next, and what is down the road. It's I think when we look at these kinds of elections, we look at intensity and what produces intensity, because the intensity factor, even on one issue, can change a Pennsylvania, can change a Michigan, can change a North Carolina. A lot of moving parts here. I remember in 2004, on 9 major issues, John Kerry, the Democratic nominee, led George W. Bush. On the issue of, and this is in the wake of 9/11, on the issue of national security, Bush topped Kerry. 64% thought he'd do a better job to 26% Kerry. That's what won it for Bush. What happens here? One thing we haven't mentioned, maybe this is where I end my point, is that as we've seen in our own polling and watching others, you really can't pigeonhole demographic groups of voters anymore. Does the anti-abortion stance actually help pick off some conservative blacks who've now been voting double-digit Republican? What about Latinos, who are very strongly split, and very traditional, but strongly split already on the presidency of Joe Biden? So this is a very complicated political year.
So if you talk about millennials, if you talk about young women, and you talk about both Catholic Hispanics and evangelical Hispanics, and then you talk about African Americans, and many of whom also are religious, not so much Catholic, but
Baptist,
more evangelical. That's true. But what about suburban women? Suburban women are a major part of the vote who, by my estimation, started to turn their back on Trump. And I think that's a major reason why, it's a part of a reason why Biden won in 2020, not just suburban women, but also independents. And so these are I think the big blocks that you have to ask. Are they going to go for the Democrats because of abortion and climate change? or are they going to go with the Republicans because of the perception or the belief or even the reality that basic freedoms that affect all Americans? See, that's the problem with identity politics, is that it tends to have this balkanizing effect where it targets, people, and you talk about gay rights, and you talk about women's rights, and you talk about African American rights, and then I have this belief that independents would probably say, well, what about rights in general?
Yeah.
Why ignore the opposite sides of rights? Why don't we just talk about rights? So in the end, who has a wider basket? Who has a bigger net that can say, you know what, our train is big enough for everybody to get on board?
Remember, though, in this game where we have battleground states that are very, very close, as I watch each of these key groups, particularly the base groups, the 5 words that I'm going to be looking at are more than their fair share. In other words, expectation is 90% of blacks, whether it's nationwide or typical congressional districts, 90% vote Democrat. If we see Democrats polling 81, 82, and 13, 14, 15% voting Republican, more than their fair share. Latinos, 66, 67, 68% vote Democrat. If, as these polls are showing today, those hold up and it's 45, 46 Democrat, 41, 42% Republican, that's more than their fair share. Democrats will have to make it up somewhere else. So,
and the polls are showing, I don't know about African Americans. I haven't seen anything recently, but I've been seeing a lot of polls come out on Hispanics.
Yeah.
And boy, are they abandoning the Democratic ticket, the Democratic Party. And, I want to make a correction. Last week, I gave a false statistic. I cited the Harvard Harris poll, and I said that 37% of Democrats only say Biden should run in 2024. That was likely voters. And so if you actually drill down to Democrats, I think that's like mid-50s, maybe high 50s of Democrats who say that their president should run. That's not good. I would call that the phenomenon of osmosis. The leadership, it's falling down, and it's seeping into the ground. And look, I'm not predicting, but I don't see how they maintain 90% of African Americans. I don't see how they maintain in the 60s of Hispanics with all of this going on.
it's going to depend ultimately, starting Tuesday, who are going to be the Senate and gubernatorial candidates, and are they too far to one side?
Probably more so Senate than the gubernatorial, though.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week. I'll see you in between.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.